Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Okay, my name's Jay Fallon, obviously, and this is the slippery slope. So I just want to talk about the current financial situation, global financial situation. Obviously, we've had all the issues with, well, the latest thing is what Trump's doing. However, the globe has been in a dire financial situation for a long time. I don't think for a second, I don't believe that the current crisis that we're facing really has anything to do with Trump, or he's done something which might be the just brought it all to a head in a way. However, we've something has to change. Something had to be brought up. Some changes needed to be made in order to fix the dire financial catastrophe that was coming anyway. So we really have no choice. Someone was going to bring the pain one day, and it happens to be Trump and this and his government at the moment. But I want to go through what Britt Gillette, he I think is probably one of the best people when it comes to explaining the current financial situation. Let's check it out. So this is his Substack. I'm not going to read the whole lot. It's very, very long. Anyway, it says 5 signs we are in a global depression. I would encourage you to check out Britt Gillette. Britt Gillette. Okay, so the world's now facing the worst economic environment since the Great Depression, and before the dust settles, the world will also witness the greatest financial crisis in human history. A debt-based monetary system, such as the one the world runs on today, is much like a Ponzi scheme. It requires ever-increasing amounts of debt to avoid implosion, just as a Ponzi scheme implodes once it runs out of new investor cash. It's funny, Ponzi schemes, obviously, they're very bad, highly illegal. However, and I've said this for a long time about the Australian housing market. The Australian housing market is just a Ponzi scheme that the government is running. It's fine for them to do it, but hey, you and I, don't you go doing it. In a system such as ours, once debt reaches its pinnacle, the system starts to collapse. It's all built on debt, this one that we have, this monetary system. This is because bankruptcies and defaults result in a shrinking currency supply, and that shrinking currency supply makes it more difficult for other borrowers to meet their debt obligations. This, in turn, leads to more defaults / bankruptcies and further shrinking of the currency supply. This vicious cycle continues until it reaches a free market equilibrium, and then growth can begin anew. This process is known as a deflationary spiral. So the Great Depression was a deflationary spiral spurred on by massive central bank credit creation, and we've seen many of the same policy mistakes that led to the Great Depression repeated our day and time, most notably massive central bank credit creation in the aftermath of both the Great Financial Crisis and the COVID pandemic. Now the consequences of those poor policy decisions threaten to plunge the world into a new economic depression. So we're going to read the 5 signs we're already in a global depression, and one set to get much worse before it gets better. Before we go on, and I'll read all these 5 signs. You remember what happened? He's saying the consequences of poor policy decisions. So we had the massive central bank credit creation in the aftermath of both the Great Financial Crisis and the COVID pandemic. So here in Australia, obviously, we were just printing cash. We were doing massive handouts. I think, which one was it there where Kevin Rudd was in charge? The financial crisis, the GFC in 2008. So, they decide, hey, we're just going to give out money to everyone, um, so that they'll all go out and buy TVs and keep the economy going. And at the time, I'm sitting there, we were in a quite a good way financially. Australia was, I think, off the top of my head, I'm going to say something like 30 billion in the black. We were, so we were quite going quite well, and we had that money. In my opinion, I believe it was, and I'll stand corrected, but I believe it was because we come out of the Howard Costello era of um of government, and they'd put us on a good footing financially, Australia. Now, I don't think everything they did was great. I think they sold off assets and they did things I think we would have been better off not doing. However, we weren't $1 trillion in debt like at the moment. So that's what they had done. You have the GFC, old K Rudd, K Rudd 7 says, hey, let's just go and give money away, which didn't seem to make sense. Which at the time you'd think, well, why don't we go and spend the money on doing works around the country that would, like for instance, you could have built a massive double lane highway from Brisbane to Cairns, spent the billions of dollars doing that up, you would have kept people working. And we would have got something out of it. But instead, these nufties say, "Oh no, let's just give the money away to all the people in the lower echelon of society, and they'll just all go out and buy TVs." And then obviously the other one is we had the COVID, and governments decided, hey, let's just go and support everyone. We're going to lock them all down, keep everyone locked down, but don't worry, we'll give you heaps of extra money so you can go because we're not going to lock down bottle shops. We're not going to lock down bottle shops and sex shops, but we'll lock down churches and other shops, but we won't lock down bottle shops and sex shops. And we'll give you extra money. Go figure. Anyway, so that's what they did. So they were basically just printing money. So this is what part of what they're talking about. Anyway, so first sign, a global trade war. Following the Trump administration's tariff announcements on April 2nd, the world is now engaged in a trade war. In addition, the deflationary problems it's already dealing with. Ooh, so President Trump on Wednesday unveiled expansive new tariffs in a major escalation of his trade war, referring to the historic move as a declaration of economic independence. Using national emergency powers, Trump announced 10% tariffs on all imports into the United States and even higher tariffs on goods from other 60 countries or trading blocs that have a high trade deficit with the US. That includes China and the European Union, which will be levied new duties of 34% and 20% respectively. So, in response, China's finance ministry said it will impose a 34% tariff on all goods imported from the US starting on April 10. Now, things have changed with this slightly, but I'll get into that afterwards. So, I'm not going to read all of these articles, all of these points all the way through because they're very, very long. So, I'll go down to the second sign is there. He says, a broken US economy. So goes on to say the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta now expects first quarter GDP to be negative 2.8%. Wow. Got a graph there if you're watching this on video where it's just gone straight down. This is despite Americans working more than ever. The number of Americans holding more than one job hit an all-time high in February of 8.86 million people, which is 5.4% of total employment, the highest share in 16 years. Meanwhile, the number of Americans holding a primary full-time as well as a secondary part-time job increased by 395,000 in February to a record 5.37 million people, which is 3.3% of total employment, the highest proportion since 1999. What's going on? Plummeting consumer sentiment, inflation concerns, tariffs, an increasing likelihood of recession, market volatility, political uncertainty, faced with a cloudy future and rising costs. Americans are working more and harder. Okay, so that was the first one. So you got the American economy starting to tank, obviously. The third point, keep scrolling down here. The second largest economy trapped in deflation. So, as the world's number two economy, this is China. China is already trapped in a deflationary spiral. I spoke about China's economic woes, I think probably a couple of years ago, 2 years ago now. How obviously you saw the collapse of its real estate. What's that massive company that was just losing tens of billions of dollars? And you could see the writing on the wall years ago. And but yet in classic China China ways, they don't come clean with anything. They don't turn around and give everyone a heads up and say, "Hey, there's a bit of trouble brewing here." No, no, they try and they like everyone to think or everyone to be scared and everyone to just think, "Oh no, China's got it all under control." But they are they are experiencing major problems. So it's trapped in a deflationary spiral, having lost over 18 trillion. I said trillion with a T. That's T for tango. 18 trillion in its property sector alone since 2021, according to Barclays. And as of yet, we see no indication the situation will change anytime soon. As reported, when Xi Jinping became president in 2013, there was widespread optimism across China. At that time, many Chinese economists held a linear viewpoint, believing that the country's development would progress continuously. However, today, China finds itself trapped in a deflationary cycle. It was Evergreen, sorry, that was that company, Evergreen, that's collapsed. Deflation occurs when weak demand leads to falling prices for goods and services, especially industrial products. Food staples are typically less affected. This price decline results in consumers and businesses refraining from purchases as they expect even low prices in the future, which can trigger drops in wages and set the stage for a recession. China has been experiencing continuous deflation with prices falling for 6 consecutive quarters. Six. Traditionally, Beijing has responded to deflation with aggressive monetary easing and fiscal stimulus. However, since the COVID-19 plan, the government has taken a more cautious approach to prevent a rise in debt. So, if you know anything about China, they have got so the housing market has just collapsed. It says here China needs more significant stimulus to crush deflation fears, economists, but I don't think there's anything they can really do. Chinese restaurants race to the bottom in deflation hit economy. So anyway, so that was the third one. Number four, German deindustrialization. So if you don't know, Germany is the third largest economy. It used to be America, then Japan. Anyway, so Japan lost the plot ages ago, and we'll get onto that. But number four, the fourth sign, as the world's third largest economy, Germany is undergoing a period of deindustrialization following the launch of the Russia-Ukraine war. Simply Germany simply hasn't had the access to cheap, reliable energy it had before the war broke out. And why is that, you might ask? Well, combined with a series of green policy initiatives, when the government makes decisions that are going to go awry and just this is exactly what they've done. Reliable energy so it hasn't had the access. Germany simply hasn't had the access to cheap, reliable energy it had before the war broke out, combined with a series of green policy initiatives that have shut down German coal and nuclear power plants. Many German companies face the choice of bankruptcy or relocating their operations abroad. In February 2025, industrial production declined 1.3% month over month and 4% year over year. Is it any wonder economists are slashing their growth forecasts? Absolutely ridiculous. So the German government on Wednesday slashed its gross domestic product forecast to just 0.3% growth in 2025. The diagnosis is serious. Robert Habeck, economy and climate minister. That's the problem there, mixing climate minister and economy. Said during a press conference. According to a CNBC translation, he noted that while there are some positive developments such as rising demand for credit, Germany is stuck in stagnation Anyway, so obviously their car industry is like some of these headlines. Volkswagen looks to restructure across passenger car, group components and commercial vehicle divisions. Germany in crisis. Intel and Volkswagen mull a multi-billion-dollar withdrawal from the country. Uh, Another nail in the coffin. Germany's car industry faces up to Trump's tariffs. So these are all the things that are going on at the moment over there. And then the fifth sign, Japan locked in a currency crisis. Japan is in they are in major troubles, and it's very important because it's really just telegraphing where we're all heading. So, as bad as things are in the United States, China, and Germany, they're even worse than the world's fourth largest economy, Japan. In May 20, well, he says in his May of 2024 article, this is Britt Gillette's article, six potential triggers for the next global financial crisis. He listed the second trigger as a Japanese currency crisis. So he goes on. Meanwhile, the world's fourth largest economy is on the verge of a major currency crisis. The Japanese yen currently sits at its lowest level relative to the US dollar since 1990. To prevent the situation from getting worse, will likely require the Bank of Japan to raise interest rates or the US Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. Given the recent persistence of inflation, it's unlikely we'll see the US lower rates in the short term, absent a major financial crisis. This means the Bank of Japan may be forced to raise rates and take other measures to defend its currency. But this will cause a number of problems. First, the Japanese currency is in recession. So raising rates will only make the problem worse. Second, Japanese government debt stands at over 260% of GDP. 260%. Believe it or not, that's twice as bad as the United States. Wow. Raising rates means more interest on the national debt, potentially sparking a debt spiral that could destroy the country. Furthermore, if the Bank of Japan starts hiking rates, this could cause a reversal of the yen carry trade. Succinctly explained, anyway, I won't get into that, which could quickly lead to a disorderly unraveling of financial positions all over the world. Along the way, we could see margin calls and exploding derivatives positions that crash global financial markets. Okay, but like I said, a few things or something has changed. So Trump has just made another announcement about tariffs, and this is regarding China. So let's go and watch this video. So he's raised the tariffs, I believe, with China again, raised them. And he's put a pause on tariffs with other countries that haven't been reciprocating tariffs against the US. I believe that's the way it goes. So let's just check out exactly what he's done here.
Now, we are just going to briefly return to our main story here tonight, tariffs and the global turmoil that we've been telling you about, because just literally in the last couple of minutes, we're hearing that President Trump has announced that there will be a 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs for all countries except China. He's saying, let's find out more from Simon Jack. What do we know, Simon?
It looks like the US has blinked, because in the last few minutes, I'm just looking at the markets now, they've rocketed up, the US stock market up 6% on that news that they will pause for 90 days for countries that have not retaliated. He is putting the tariffs up on China, but for countries like the UK, which have not retaliated, there will be a 90-day pause. And as I say, the markets are taking a huge sigh of relief from that. They think there's time in that time to do some deals, so that it won't be so punitive. But just a real example of just how turbulent this is, that literally since we've been on air, a massive U-turn from the government, from the US government. But as I say, only on those countries that haven't retaliated. That, by the way, includes the UK.
Now, as they said there too, and I've seen it on the stock markets here in Australia, there's been a massive change. Everything's bounced back up, the share market. However, as Britt Gillette was saying, this is what you're going to see. He believes, and I do agree, that we're in a global depression. We're in this maybe every country isn't in a deflationary spiral, but I believe we're heading into a global depression. And as was what happened in the Great Depression in was it 1929. things don't just happen within a day or two. Things take it. It reaches. It might start on this day, but it reaches the pinnacle. It reaches the actual depths of the depression. I think 2 or 3 years later. It doesn't just happen. So we're going to see spikes like what we are today. But my opinion, concurring with what Britt Gillette's saying, is that we're going to see this debt crisis and this financial crisis continue to spiral down. Now, I think this because the Bible describes the financial situation in the world. It's going to be in a dire state, and we're going to see a financial collapse. So this is what the Bible's described, and I think this is where we're headed. Which is, it's not good news if you're an investor, but at the end of the day, we are going to end up in with some kind of one world currency, one world government. This one world government taking control of the economic system, and I think we're going to end up with the one world government taking control of the economic system because we're going to see a major financial crisis play out, and this could very well be the start of it. Very well. Anyway, this is all my opinion. I would encourage you, go and check out Britt Gillette on Substack and YouTube. He's got some really good things. He's been talking about this stuff coming for a couple of years. So it shouldn't be any surprise if you've been watching him. Hey, this is all my opinion. My name is Jay Fallon. Thank you for listening to The Slippery Slope. Please like and share and check out my music if you can. Jay Fallon. I'm Jay Fallon. Thanks for listening to The Slippery Slope.
Just fuel a desire that will take me